Hello, sir.
Hello, Santoshni.
Sir, in the context of the Women's Day, I would like to hear from you about the status of women in Indian politics with respect to the political participation and also the policy making.
Santoshni, I think we have enough evidence, statistical evidence. Actually, it was a group of us at the time, Manushi, Madhu Kishwar, then CSTS, Dhirubhai Seth and Yogendra Yadav, and FDR Lok Satta and I. We sat together to draft an alternative women's bill way back in 1998, 25, 26 years ago. So we conclusively established that how women are relegated in importance in politics and how it's desperately necessary to do it. And we attempted to find an elegant way based on evidence and logic and best practices in the world. So clearly the answer is obvious. Women simply are not getting adequate space in politics. I personally believe it's not only important for reasons of representation and legitimacy. After all, every group must have a voice heard. That's what democracy is about. But to me, it's something even more important. Our notion of power in a country like India, we are still emerging from a feudal, patriarchal, hierarchical system. And India is particularly patriarchal and hierarchical because of caste system, power relationships within the family and outside, etc. In such a society, power is traditionally seen even in a democratic structure as one of dominance, Marathai. It's about control, it's about command. It's not about collective goods and services. It's not about service. Our hope is that women, both by virtue of biological affinity and because of the social situation in India, their own experience in India, women have been the gender sustaining of families, paying enormous price quietly and oftentimes surprisingly cheerfully. That's been with the Indian ethos. And therefore, if they are in positions of influence and power, they will view power differently. It's not about dominance and control. It's about service delivery, particularly areas that matter. Safety of people, fairness in dealing with them in terms of rule of law, quality education for children, quality health care, basic communities with our resources, with our tax money for the collective good. That sensitization will be automatic. Therefore, it's absolutely critical. But unfortunately, until now, we paid only lip sympathy. Only now, recently, the parliament enacted a law. In my judgment, the law could have been better. But at least something is better than nothing. I think from 2029, they want to implement that. That's what the constitutional amendment said. Let's hope that it will actually be implemented in spirit, not only in letter. And women are truly empowered. And we create a framework in which women leadership actually rises and transforms the nature of politics.
Sir, like with about 50% of population constituted by women and Indian economy growing at a faster pace, where would you see their place in economic contribution and growth?
It requires deeper reflection than I am capable of. A lot of experts must look at it. But from a superficial study of the numbers, etc., the two things are happening. In the short term, if you notice, the women's participation in labor force about a year, 2 years ago fell quite dramatically. Maybe because of COVID, maybe because of some other factors. It came down to as low as 20%. In fact, some numbers are alarming, lower than even the Islamic countries where women generally relegated to the margins. But now the latest indication is I think they're at 33, 34%. So probably largely agricultural labor participation might have increased. We have to study deeper. But that is the numbers. But there are two processes at work as I see it. Purely empirical, from a distance when you watch, are anecdotal. In the middle classes, women are now doing better than boys. Girls are doing better than boys. Maybe because they're more disciplined. The expectation is that they will stick to the task instead of being distracted. And boys are raised badly. There is a sense of entitlement for the boys in the country. For that, the parents must take responsibility. And therefore, women, once the opportunity is given in our political system, whatever be its failings, is pretty progressive in these matters in terms of laws and the framework. And once the opportunity is given, the girls are doing remarkably well. Almost every college and university you go to, except the very high-end institutions where both are equal. Otherwise, everywhere else it's the girls who are dominating, who are doing very well. And they take medical profession. About 60 to 65% of entrance into undergraduate medicine are girls, in at least the parts of the country which I am familiar with. It's an extremely positive sign, and they're all doing very well and they're rising to the top. But not all of them are productive workers in the long term, partly because of gender bias, pregnancy, child rearing, other considerations. The notion that the woman and woman alone will bear the burden of child rearing. Child bearing is inevitable, it's biological. But child rearing need not be entirely women's burden. Our society still, I think, has not moved to a stage where the man and the woman, both the parents, take equal responsibility. And perhaps our systems also are not yet built. Slowly it's beginning to happen. For that reason, they're losing out. The second is, the expectation in certain middle and upper class families even today is, for ornamental purposes you may go through education, but after that, no, you don't have to go outside the house and work. So you get married and that's it. I think both are very unhappy. So that is at one end. But on the whole, there is movement compared to my mother's time when she had to give up education at school level after 8th grade, merely because 9th grade onwards the school was in some other village. And my grandfather felt it was infradig to send my mother to another village to study. Feudalism, how can my girl go to another village to study, kind of thing. In that sense, we come far, but not far enough. But the poorer section, something else is happening. Because of the abject failure of education in public systems, and even in private systems in the low-end schools. And the poorer people cannot afford to send their children to better schools or do not have the ability to guide their children at home. The girls are particularly badly off. It's very common where I see at the field level. The boy, even in a poor family, typically goes to a private school. The girl goes to a sarkari school because there's no fee involved. That's why at the low end, in government schools, the girls' participation is higher, enrollment is higher. So you can see that pattern in many states. And outcomes are appallingly poor. And because girl is not seen as an economic asset, because outcomes anyway are bad, and the families don't understand why outcomes are bad, simply that they're bad and therefore there is no real economic value. The boy also is equally lacking in economic value. But the girl is seen as a burden, therefore get her married off as soon as possible. Even as the families are getting limited, fewer and fewer children are there per family. In terms of age of marriage and many other practices, there's not a significant improvement yet. And therefore the potential of many girls is wasted. I think both need to be addressed. There's no question about it. And in general, we have to see how to create a safe environment for girls and women to work or to go to higher education, or even high school, 9th grade onwards, the higher end of the high school. Because these are all factors in a conservative society which are precluding girls from getting better education or participating in the workforce effectively. We need to do a lot of work.
So coming to the society aspect, like it's been over 75 years since we have gained independence. How would you see the lens of the society or social structures changing, or is it the same with respect to viewing women?
I think in a broad sense, it's no longer unusual or strange for women to do almost everything that men can do. Education, professions, jobs, leadership, though much less common, entertainment, or no, being independent, driving your own car, and so on and so forth. But society still has not moved as fast as the law. I think each of us must search our souls. I wonder in how many households is the girl still asked to clean the dishes after the family has a meal? And in how many households is the boy also sharing that? The parents, as parents, I don't know what, even as individuals, in how many households do the husband and the wife equally share the household chores? It is still infradig for a man in India or for a boy in India to do the household chores. Now, no matter what the law says, if this is what the practice is habitual and we are not changing, then these boys carry that. Two, because girls are doing better in colleges, and because society still treats a man as superior socially, whatever we say, there's actually a danger to many women, and I would not be surprised if there is actually greater violence in some respects, because the anger and inferiority complex lead to frustration, bitterness, and violence. And in the poorer sections, because of drunkenness, and because it's much harder to change attitudes because there's not enough education or productivity and therefore gainful employment and a real opportunity to rise economically. The subjugation of women and serious violence against women is still continuing. In some respects, perhaps even increasing, because drunkenness and violence against women are proportionate to each other. And I think by all accounts, drunkenness is growing in India. It's not diminishing. And finally, on the street, day to day, in the public transport and shop floors, offices, workplaces, factories, still day to day low degree of violence. I'm not talking of mega cases of serious brutal violence. I'm talking of low degree of habitual violence, catcalls, whistling, describing a woman's body, or touching a person without her consent, unwanted comments. I think our women folks suffer them almost every day, and they sort of learn to deal with that. It should not be necessary for women to deal with that, learning to deal with it. It should simply not be there. If you don't create safe public spaces, seriously, I'm not saying everybody should be jailed, you don't require to do that. But if within a day or two after such an incident, there is a quick framework of summary inquiry through a local court and some immediate punishment, even a 1,000 rupee fine. But you're on probation, and once again it happens in the next 1 year, 2 years, both your job and your education will be in jeopardy. If that signal goes, then things will change quickly. And right now, our rule of law framework is so incredibly weak. Even murder cases, we don't have the capacity to settle in years and decades. Where's the question of worrying about that? In fact, FDR Lok Satta, way back in 2009, we were instrumental in getting a law enacted called Gram Nyaya Sat. Actually, I wanted it to be local courts law for the rural urban areas. Now you can expand it to urban areas and actually implement it and make women's safety and day-to-day simple violence against women or harassment of women as the centerpiece of the issue. But there's no political will. When something dramatic happens, the whole society responds, politicians come up with some bombastic statements. That's not enough. Unless you arrest the day-to-day harassment and a sense of absence of safety or dignity for women, you cannot prevent the big crimes. And even if you prevent the big crimes, as long as the day-to-day violence, even if it's subliminal, continues, women's participation in the workforce or the sense of equality and dignity will always be undermined. So we need to do something about that.
Sir, on a lighter note, I would like to hear from you the woman who inspired and shaped your character in your life.
In recent times, I'm a great admirer of Aung San Suu Kyi. And my heart goes out to her, like Navalny, who was martyred recently. Aung San Suu Kyi was living in Britain. She was a permanent resident, married a Britisher, had children. She had no reason to go back to Myanmar, not Burma. She could have easily mobilized the Burmese community or international opinion while living in Britain. But she chose when she could have opted out of it and served her country by other means. And she paid the full price and continued to pay the price. For some time, because of global opinion, there was some effort to rehabilitate her and give her some position, though she was denied the headship of the government. But she was still given some role. But again, she is incarcerated. So I think she's a truly inspiring woman to me. And while you may or may not accept some of the policies, Margaret Thatcher rose from poverty. She was not a person born with a silver spoon. She didn't have means as a child. She rose from an ordinary, relatively modest family of means, and then educated herself, rose in leadership without any pedigree. She's not the daughter of somebody. That's not what gave her the rise. She, by the strength of her personality and her will and her opinions and ideas, she rose into leadership and she transformed Britain and perhaps much of the world. A lot of the world is shaped by Thatcher's vision about the role of the state and how to create a middle class. How do you give the poor the opportunity to rise instead of treating them as mendicants always? There could be criticism, quite rightly. But she really transformed the vision of government, not only in Britain, but in much of Europe and the world. I think these two people come to mind.
Sir, on the closing remarks, what would you advise the women and girls today in this generation?
Don't hold back. Don't ever think that because of your circumstance of birth, in this case gender, or other circumstances of in which family you're born, or where you're born, that your future is limited. The Sanskrit adage says, Onkara parivrittam vishvam, sankalpa parimitam drishyam. Don't let your sankalpa, your imagination, or your dream be constrained by circumstances. You live in a fantastic age, an age of unlimited possibilities, when technology is opening up, when boundaries are collapsing, when opportunities are becoming boundless. So dream big and equip yourself. And don't allow others to dictate what your role is. You dictate your role.